It is Tuesday, January the 18th. I am John Pollock, joined by the one, only, never to be replicated, everyone tries to duplicate, the original, the classic, Wai Ting. Hello, Wai.
Wow, what an introduction.
I try.
Thank you very much for that. Did not expect that. How
Everyone's
are you?
excited when they see your wonderful face. It's like, oh, thank God. Can't do. We can stomach Pollock, but it's got to be with Wai and only Wai.
Well, thank you so much, John. It's great to be here on another Tuesday, another weekday here in the Post Daily News Update.
Yes, that is our headline story. It is Tuesday. Um,
Is it a
how's
big news day today,
no,
John?
no, there's not a whole lot going on. So you and I are just gonna chat. We're gonna talk. We're gonna dive a little into what is coming up this weekend, and I would say that as we look towards this weekend, I think there is. I'm gonna use the word palpable. Well, there is a palpable buzz for this Hammerstein Ballroom show on Sunday that I think is going to do. First of all, like we don't see GCW pay-per-view numbers, but I think it would be a fair estimate to imagine that of the spring breaks, the Nick Gage Jon Moxley match that they did back in October, this certainly stands to be the show that is going to be their most purchased. Would that be a layup of a prediction, or do you think that this maybe not?
Absolutely. Yeah, I can't see it really working out any other way in terms of buzz. It's the most I've heard about a GCW show. It is, I mean, for all intents, I what feels like the WrestleMania.
Okay, well, we'll talk about that card in a little bit, but let's wrap up some stuff as well from Monday that we wanted to discuss. Mainly, all the focus that has been placed on one Cody Rhodes with this news that came from Fightful on Monday, that Cody Rhodes is technically working without an AEW contract. Dave Meltzer had some follow-up reporting on his show on Monday night, noting that, as fun as it may be to speculate, there doesn't really seem to be a whole lot there in terms of, this guy coming in to the Royal Rumble where people's, minds are going to go naturally. But this is, and another great point that was also brought up is the fact that, he was there for the January 5th show and then rushed home with the COVID issue that would ultimately take him out of Battle of the Belts. So he hasn't been at TV for several weeks. But maybe the more interesting question, Wai, is that I don't think many people are expecting any kind of departure here. But how does Cody Rhodes and AEW, do they run with this? Do you expect this to be, at the very least, alluded to on Wednesday night segment when he returns to TV?
Absolutely. I think when it comes to this type of story, um, any PR is positive PR. From what Dave seems to allude to, there seems to be there's a second season of Roads to the Top that's being worked on, and this could very well be a part of the storyline for it. The fact, I mean, we talked about this yesterday, and I I thought it was neat. It's an interesting tidbit. Oh, okay, like somebody who we would expect to have automatically just re-signed might technically not be working on any sort of contract. It's neat. Not for a second do I think that he would be leaving or doing anything else, but I
It's
mean,
it's still noteworthy. Like it's
it's
like it's
noteworthy. Yeah.
it's news, but where I think people go too far when they are thinking like when they're kind of fantasizing like what this is going to lead to. I think that's where you kind of gotta rein things in.
Yeah, like the suggestions that like people and the fans do this. Anytime we get a morsel of information that might be behind the scenes, our imaginations will run wild about what can happen. Of course, anytime the Rumble is only a week or two away, people are going to speculate. Hey, who's available? What free agents are there? Not for a second did I think so, but I mean, there's a lot of imagination and a lot of interest from the audience about what Cody Rhodes will be doing, and I think AEW would be silly not to. I mean, I think this is the intent. From what we gather, Dave says a lot of people weren't necessarily answering his questions, and I think the idea here was probably to somehow build some interest through the media, through the audience, for what will happen ultimately, maybe on a reality show or maybe on TV.
Does this at all I would say like Cody's segment is probably the big thing for Wednesday night for Dynamite. Like I think regardless before even any of this news, but I think like this kind of news, it does travel to the audience that is most inclined to be tuning into a Dynamite. And regardless, I think Cody being back on TV, that's a notable element for Wednesday night's show, which is week 3 on TBS.
I think it's fun, and I think Cody Rhodes has proven to be somebody who is really attempting to think at a different level of how he can, manipulate or whatever, like engage an audience. There's a more attractive sounding word, engage an audience in ways outside of your traditional boundaries of what's expected of a professional wrestling personality, whether it be dancing between the lines of heel or babyface, or now maybe blurring the lines between reality of who might be, whether or not he might actually have signed a contract or not. It's fun. It doesn't always work, but I applaud him for trying new things.
Well, it'll be a noteworthy segment regardless of what is said, as is with most Cody Rhodes segments, especially when it is him addressing the audience. So that is happening on Wednesday night. So getting back to GCW, they've made several announcements, additions to Sunday's card. So this is the latest that we have. And we should note that it was also reported by the Wrestling Observer that Eddie Kingston is dealing with a broken orbital. And the timeline that they reported for him to be out is around 3 weeks. And of course, they had been teasing AJ Gray facing Eddie Kingston on this Sunday show. Now, that would not, to me, rule out an appearance by Eddie Kingston, but unlikely that you will see him wrestling on this show, nor had they officially announced that match. But the current card as it stands is Jon Moxley defending the GCW title against Homicide, Jonathan Gresham defending the ROH title against Blake Christian, the Briscoes holding an open challenge for the GCW tag titles, Bandito, Laredo Kid, and ASF taking on Eris, Demonic Flamita, and Gringo Loco. That should be a really fun Lucha Trios match. Jeff Jarrett versus Effie. Matt Cardona versus Joey Janela. Allie Katch versus Ruby Soho. And on Monday, adding the Grab the Brass Ring ladder match with the participants featuring PCO, Alex Colon, Tony Deppen, Leo Rush, Jimmy Lloyd, and Jordan Oliver. This match is going to be insane.
It's going to be wild. Absolutely. Yeah. Just a great combination of, I think, high flyers and deathmatch wrestlers. And then
everything. There is everything in that match.
And then you throw in a PCO in there as well. I'm quite excited for this one. It's going to be wild.
How about the card as a whole? Like there's quite a bit of star power on this show that, with, more AEW involvement than I was expecting on this show.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah. I mean, all we're really talking about is, hey, who's available and who kind of fits in within the GCW, I don't know, realm.
The Wrld, way say it. The GCW, the Wrld is on GCW.
And the answer is everybody. Anybody in professional wrestling's history or future or present can fit within GCW in this incredibly weird toy box.
The wrestling world, they needed a card that featured Jeff Jarrett and Alex Colon in separate matches.
You can honestly draw names out of a hat and you put them for some reason under this GCW umbrella, and it'll be fascinating because I think you can expect a good level of creativity. You can expect a crowd that'll be able to buy into the irony and to be able to accentuate the irony of Jeff Jarrett appearing, for instance, in this promotion. So I'm very interested in seeing crowd reactions, honestly, to a lot of things like a Jeff Jarrett match. Ruby Soho versus Allie Katch, just some of the little promotional video itself. I'm very excited to see. They're the lone women's match on this show, so hopefully they can put on a great performance and really leave the people talking here. But we've also got, of course, Jonathan Gresham versus Blake Christian, which I think will be a tremendous match. What do you think? I mean, it's got to be Moxley versus Homicide headlining, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, unless there's a specific reason to put something else on last, but yeah, that would make sense, especially if this ends up being the official first time we see Jon Moxley, which is not a given. We have 2 AEW live shows this week in Washington, so there's always that chance that he shows up. But yeah, I would say on the front, unless they have an angle scheduled that it requires something else going on last. I can't imagine it all ending with Jeff Jarrett just holding a guitar in the air, and that's how we go off.
Yeah, I don't I don't really see that. Who do you think answers the challenge for the Briscoes?
Um, I mean, everyone's kind of throwing out like FTR. That would seem like something that I don't see happening in GCW. That they would maybe do that elsewhere. I don't know. I like with GCW. I give them a lot of credit when it comes to like this is an audience that they can go pretty deep, and I think get like some of the ideas that they come up with are probably better than what we're going to just throw out off the top of our head right now. But I always say when you have that TBA, you got to have something really great that. I mean, this crowd, I think they're going to love. This crowd's going to be awesome on Sunday night. I think that's going to be one of many stories on this show. Is going to be a loud, energetic crowd for the entire duration of this card. That will technically be the most fans to ever attend a wrestling show at the Hammerstein Ballroom, given the way they were able to configure the floor plan. This was a venue that typically held like 1,800 or so when they would run, but they are able to fit over 2,000 into this. So it's going to be electric on Sunday for the actual pay-per-view portion.
What do you think the status of Nick Gage is for this show?
Well, I mean, that would be kind of like if you are keeping him saved for an appearance, that's where I could certainly see something where he appears at the end of the show. If you had that in your back pocket, this would certainly be the show to do that. He's obviously been taking a break, and I think that's you kind of have to respect that. But this is certainly the show that people would be looking at. Like if he is being saved for something, this is it.
Yeah, unless there was like, like that much of a notable injury that would be keeping him out, I think you can probably safely bet that there'd be a Nick Gage appearance on the show and the reaction will be wild. What about music, John? Like what do you think happens with entrance music?
Um, like who are you talking about specifically? Like a
No, I mean
Moxley?
I mean like licensed music. I mean this is a pay-per-view event. I don't know if there are any like will they be following any sort of different rules for this one, or are we just going to see, you know, licensed music appear throughout the show?
I mean, I guess it's a good question, but I don't look at them running the show all that differently. You're also talking about a show in New York, which is a commission state as well. Now they have run New York before, but that's also like a subject I've seen brought up as well about running in New York, for instance, given the GCW style of presentation. They've also got the Hall of Fame the night prior, where Dave Prazak is going in, Homicide, Ruckus, Jerry Lynn, Tracy Smothers, and LuFisto. And among those inducting will be CM Punk with inducting Dave Prazak. And they're running this for free on the Saturday night. That I think is a cool deal that they're putting this on for free, because I do think there would be plenty of people willing to pay for this Hall of Fame ceremony on the Saturday night. And instead, it's going to be free on their, I think Fight's running it for free, and it'll be on the GCW YouTube as well.
Very cool. Yeah, it's very interesting. Like, there's a lot of chatter in the chat room right now from John Pine and MJ, who are locals. John Pine, of course, is the person who does a lot of our GCW reports, and hopefully we'd be able to talk to John after he appears. But he is calling this All In Part 2. Does it feel that way to you, John? I mean, I don't think it's not that big for me personally, but have we seen, a show that is not from a major promotion that has TV right now receive as much buzz in North America as this one since All In?
I mean, it's got a lot of buzz. Like for GCW, this does to me represent a show that is the next step in the evolution of this company. I think when you trace like the big moments for GCW, this is a major one on Sunday. Like I think it's going to do really well on pay-per-view, and it's a company that it's where like from all indications had a fantastic year last year, and this is just the fact that they're running traditional pay-per-view, I think that's a bit of a statement in and of itself, that they are running. But certainly, like I think like this will have most of the attention for this weekend for wrestling fans, a lot of it. And I think that there are going to be more first-time GCW viewers this weekend than probably any of their other shows. And I include like Moxley and Gage, the spring breaks. Like I think if you are someone that has heard about this company, this is the show that you are testing out. And it's interesting to look at the makeup here. Like they have filled this card with recognizable figures outside of just like GCW regulars. Like this is people with a lot of like national recognition coming into the GCW world. And that's always an interesting balancing act. But GCW has a pretty good track record of not compromising their product when it comes to like this. This feels like we are trying to expand the base in a big way. So, yeah, not the worst comparison, but I think, yeah, this is a significant step for GCW, whatever you want to look in terms of like their 5 years of operation or so. This is a pivotal step for them on Sunday.
Raphael in the chat room says, am I the only one thinking it's weird that Moxley's return is at GCW and not AEW? Which, poses another interesting question. Do you think we have any Jon Moxley on any of the AEW shows this week before GCW?
Well, it tells you that like if Moxley is able to, to come back, it's only going to create anticipation for his AEW return. Yeah, I did think we would see Moxley at AEW first. But honestly, like I said this before, I think now, like you could just go through with this and then wait for the time to bring Moxley back in AEW. Like it does feel you would really just be throwing him onto the show this week without any kind of like people are somewhat probably anticipating it this week. And you could do it. I don't think it's a big positive or negative if you were to bring him back this week before Sunday. But you could also just wait till this weekend passes and then bring Moxley back in 3 or 4 weeks time when people are not expecting it as much. And you've got that, and you're closer to the pay-per-view as well, where you would think for sure Moxley will be part of Revolution in March at this rate.
I think so too. Yeah. I mean, again, he is the champion, so I do think there's an added bit of pressure on him to appear on the biggest show that this promotion has ever had. Again, what's the story that fits for a Moxley return right now? I think there's a big audience for GCW, but it doesn't compare to the size of audience for AEW. So he can make his return on this show, and then he'll, return to AEW a week or two later, and it'll still be just as fresh as if he never appeared. So I don't think AEW has anything to be concerned about, or AEW fans, I mean.
Whether he appears this week on AEW programming, regardless, this is an incredible gesture that Moxley is wrestling on their pay-per-view.
Totally. Absolutely. Yeah. The journeyman right now in pro wrestling.
How do you see Moxley being reintroduced? Because we were just going through the heel turn with Jon Moxley, and there's no way this guy is showing up and being received as such. He is going to get a monstrous response when he comes back. Do you ride that out, or do you just see things slowly getting back on track to where they were when he left?
I think he's a babyface big time. I mean, I do see the Hangman Page match for him probably in his immediate future, but I think he can, go on with that match as a babyface and do a double babyface. Even when he was leading towards being a heel during that number one contenders tournament, the motivations were still, I think, very noble, right? He wanted to beat these guys up quickly so that he can go home to his wife and to his kid. Like it's great, sort of like anti-hero, but likable, philosophy that I think doesn't take much character shifting in order to make him, revert back to being a full-on babyface. So yeah, especially coming off of maybe a story like he has, I don't see a heel run in unless you really want to fight against the audience, at least in the immediate future.
One other thing I just wanted to bring up, because I don't know how much we'll get into it this week, is that Saturday night also has the UFC 270 pay-per-view, and this is the first ESPN Plus show that's going to have the price increase. So it's a $74.99 pay-per-view with Francis Ngannou taking on Cyril Gane. And it's a really interesting story involving Francis Ngannou's contract with the UFC, because if he loses the title on Saturday, Gane is the interim champion and Ngannou is the regular champion. If Ngannou loses, his contract with UFC is over and he can go explore boxing. He can do whatever he wants. But if he wins, because of the champions clause, his contract automatically rolls over for, I believe, like 3 additional fights. So it's really interesting. Like, here's a guy that
does he get to renegotiate the amount?
UFC contracts, you can always renegotiate them, but UFC can also say, well, we're not renegotiating because you've got a deal in place. They are very much structured towards the promoter and not the fighter. So, Ngannou has said, regardless, if I win, I am not fighting for this amount anymore. So it is going to be quite the logjam if he wins this fight on Saturday and he is locked into these fights. And it's a very interesting scenario for Francis Ngannou, who has not been shy about his displeasure with dealing with the UFC and his pay.
That is so incredibly strange. Like, what talk about strange incentive to, I don't know, head into this match to win. That's bizarre. I'm curious to know what happens if he wins.
It's a greater like philosophical question that I'm always curious if like the that it's ever more explored on kind of on a commission level or just an oversight into these fighter contracts, that one could argue if you are looking at the value to the consumer, that they are getting a legitimate contest here, that you could argue that this contract, Francis Ngannou is actually incentivized to lose if he believes that the open market could provide him so much more money than what a win could under the current structure of this UFC contract. That it just is interesting if these fighter contracts are ever really put under any kind of scrutiny and are really explored, because the way they are now, like, it's just, they're so beneficial to the promoter with this champions clause that you can just win and they continually roll over. You are not going to have a situation where a fighter wins as champion and suddenly he can go to the highest bidder. Like, that is a way the UFC has protected themselves and has worked to their interest.
Yeah, it's really crazy and really messed up. Like, I don't know if in any other field your reward for performing exceptionally well and winning a championship or, achieving the pinnacle of your chosen field is to be stuck under the same terms in the same contract. It makes no sense to me.
Yeah, and it's also at a time where, like, his MMA options are not that grand. Like a Bellator or a PFL or a One Championship, they're just not structured to be able to spend the kind of money that a Francis Ngannou would likely command. Like, his MMA options, like, the UFC is the superior choice. But when you throw in like all of these boxing opportunities that fighters are now suddenly having at their disposal, that's where a lot of money can be made. And that's largely the leverage that you see for, Nathan Diaz is another one. He has one fight left on his deal. And that's this interesting chess match that's going on. Because, you're not looking at your big money in MMA companies. You're looking at these boxing opportunities. So that's one of the stories going into Saturday's card. And we will be doing a post show after UFC 70, myself and Phil Chairtalk, as we chat about that card. But we'll wind things down by looking ahead tonight. Not a whole lot announced for NXT 2.0. We're getting Walter versus Roderick Strong and the memorial service for Pete Dunne, hosted by Tony D'Angelo.
Sure. Yeah. My interest is in seeing if we get any more of Sleepy Wendy Chu, John.
Oh,
What
yeah.
are have you had a chance to check out Sleepy Wendy Chu's first match? And if so, what are your thoughts?
I saw it. I mean, I'm not gonna make the obvious joke, but maybe she's gonna surprise some people.
What's the joke? Please go ahead.
That people are sleeping on her as this character. She was fine in the character. It's cool. I don't know. It's one of those characters that I see. It's, it has some novelty for about 15 minutes, and then I don't want to see her like stuck in this character, but she's a good performer.
I mean, that's what they said about Orange Cassidy.
Yes. I don't know if Orange Cassidy would flourish in this system either, but we'll see. We could be proven wrong. So there you go. That's your big appeal for NXT 2.0 tonight. The follow-up with Sleepy Wendy Chu.
Yeah, and Walter, of course.
What a combination.
Maybe a future team up.
Maybe Walter's going to show up. He's going to have jet lag from the flight over here, and he's going to be sleepy.
Maybe. Yeah, perfect. He needs a rebrand for sure.
Him and Roderick could have a great match tonight, potentially.
Yeah, definitely.
All right.
Well, hey, we have one super chat here from MJ, who says, after last night's review, what tier gets Max's thoughts on Raw? He's got to be 7 years old now, right? John, maybe he can give you the night off. No, he's not 7. No. Not even close.
No.
Yeah, at what age would you be comfortable, showing your kids professional wrestling even?
I don't know. It's not even on his radar or anything like that. I mean, I'm not opposed to it, but I mean, I kind of just let him figure out what he's interested in. I don't push anything on them to watch, nor would I really care if he wants to watch wrestling or not. But there you go. That's it. What's
All
coming
right.
up tonight?
NXT up next, of course. And then we also have Ask Away, full mailbag full of questions answered for about 80 minutes time. In fact, you could probably find that at about 8 o'clock Eastern time if you're a Post Wrestling Cafe patron. So look for that right now in your feed. Or
Very good
later
mailbag. A lot of great questions this month. So look out for that tonight if you are a Post Wrestling Cafe member. Yes, Up Next live with Braden and Davey, 10:15 Eastern, twitch.tv/Up Next podcast. As it's the Davey Canadian farewell tour, but not the Davey Portman farewell tour.
No, not yet. No, he is taken off for a bit, but he'll be doing shows remotely from the UK. So yeah, we'll chat with him soon.
All right, and we're back on Wednesday live here, same time, same place. Check it all out, and that is your Post Daily News Update.